Hello, everybody. Welcome to Half Past Dead Paranormal Radio, the Paranormal and Strange. We're brought to you on WCJV Digital Broadcasting out of Youngstown, New York. I'm your host, Roger Belt, and your other host is Mr. Hank Stratton.
Hello, everybody.
And we have a good group of people here tonight, y'all. We have Mr. Mike Wooley and Debi King McMartin, and I believe your friend Mike is here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm bad with names. Now, you don't mind introduce yourself, sir?
You want me to introduce myself?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, my name's Mike Wooley, and I'm from Keachai, Louisiana.
Oh, no. I was talking about your friend.
Oh, my friend, yeah.
I couldn't think of his name. I just told him to introduce himself because I couldn't think of his name.
Okay, I'm sorry. You're kind of muffled. You're real muffled, Roger.
I don't know what that is. Unless it's my microphone or something. Everything has been fine, and now all of a sudden everything's going crazy.
Sounds like you're talking in a drum.
Okay, yeah, it hadn't done this before.
Yeah, it's real hard to hear you.
Okay, I thought it might have been my phone, but I guess not.
Because I can hear Mike real well, but you're real hard to hear. Okay, what you can't hear me, you said? No, I can hear Mike real well. Okay.
No, it's not. The microphone's not showing any problem.
It's our connection because Matt sounds a little muffled, like he's saying you sound, but I'm hearing you wall to wall, treetop tall.
Okay, so yeah, Skype is going crazy. That's what it is. Anyway, without further ado.
Hello.
Hi. Debi, is that you?
I'm a firm believer in ladies first, so I'm going to let Miss Debi King McMartin here get us going and kind of talk about some of her projects and how this movie got started, and we'll go from there.
Well, I tell you what, I always appreciate a good Southern gentleman. I'm Debi King McMartin, and I'm from Louisiana, and I am the co-writer and producer of Skookum, The Hunt for Bigfoot, independent film, which was produced back in April of 2013 and soon to be released in September of 2014, right around the corner here. And I have a history in the film industry that goes way back to the writing end of it, which was about 15 years ago. I started writing from romance novels. I segued into writing screenplays. And I co-wrote a screenplay called Stone Justice, which was optioned and made into a major feature film with major stars, and they changed the name of it to The Pardon. And it has gotten theatrical release in Louisiana and been on some major networks. And then I produced a documentary film called Dreamers and Gamblers, Spirit of the Pioneer Wildcatters. And it's about the oil and gas industry history in North Louisiana and East Texas and Arkansas. And from there, I decided it was time to make a feature film. I just wanted more of a challenge, and I wanted to go into it. I wanted to do a horror film just from the business aspect, not because I'm a huge fan of horror films, but I just know that worldwide horror films do extremely well, that particular genre, financially and for investors. And so the only subject that I could even imagine myself interested in would be about Bigfoot and the Fouke monster. And since I drove through Fouke, Arkansas every day on the way to work from Vivian, Louisiana to Texarkana, Texas at the law firm I worked for there for 7 years. I just always get this creepy, eerie feeling as I drove through South, and I thought, okay, there's something here. And I've only watched The Legend of Boggy Creek, 2 zillion times, and I thought, I think it's time that someone did another movie about Bigfoot and the South Monster, and why not me? So at that time, I really didn't know anything. I thought there was like one South Monster, one big hairy thing that was out in the woods in Falk, Arkansas, and I really had never explored or researched anything beyond that. I just know that that it felt like something real there. So I told my friend Arlena Akery, who was the head of film and entertainment for the city of Shreveport, Louisiana, and she just got so excited and said, well, I have to introduce you to a friend of mine who has helped me with a lot of location scouting in DeSoto Parish, and his name is Mike Wooley, and he's actually had some experience with Sasquatch in DeSoto Parish, Louisiana. She said, you've got to talk to him. So she put me in touch with him. Mike told me his story, and I was absolutely blown away. And I knew I had to bring him on the project, and the whole script had to be, loosely based on his story, his experience, to bring the realness to it, the authenticity, which is, I think, why The Legend of Boggy Creek has been so successful, because it feels real. And so Mike, in turn, came on the project as associate producer and playing his own role as Mike Wooley. And then he brought in Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who, as many of you know, is probably the world's foremost Bigfoot research scientist. And Jeff brings so much to the project that I think a lot of people don't realize. He brings in, number one, credibility for any project that has to do with Sasquatch, because he comes in from the perspective of a scientist and brings plausibility and reality into it. He's not going to be involved in something that's hokey and not up to par. And so we wanted the project to be up to his standards, and he came on as script consultant, associate producer, and playing his own role. Even though we changed his last name, he's still the Bigfoot research scientist, and his name is Dr. Jeff Cameron in the movie. And he's not only brought so many great perspectives to the project, but he's also a great actor, and he's a lot of fun to be around. So I think everybody's going to be really excited about how Jeff comes across in the film, as well as Mike Wooley. Not being an actor, Mike comes in with his own persona, which I think makes it just fabulous. So that's pretty much sums it up. Just really gives you the basics of what we're doing and the layout of our plan.
Do you feel like that you actually could have had like a real Bigfoot in the woods or something around when y'all were doing the filming?
I'm going to have to tell you something. When you said that, I had a friend of mine, Leslie Whiten, who flew down on her own dime from Pennsylvania just because she wanted to be part of the project and she wanted to help out. She wanted to get a credit on the film as production assistant. And you know how when you're in production, everything is it's controlled chaos at the best. And somehow she got put in charge of being at the end of the dirt road at the edge of the swamp. And the production team forgot about her, didn't leave her with a flashlight. It got dark, and she said there was something out there watching her, and she felt eyes on her, and she was totally scared. She said there was something there, and she heard a howl, and she said, I know it was there. It was watching us making a movie about it. It was there. So, that has always stuck with me, and Leslie's going to tell about her experience about that in a new book that will be coming out too within the next few months. So, that was pretty amazing. I do think that you hit the nail on the head there. Now, you'll be hearing more about that.
what was the thing about the couple in the car that thought they saw a chupacabra? Or
Chupacabra. That was Shane Daschek, who was actually on the project as he was one of the production team, and he also played a major role in the film. He was one of the major stars. And he and the makeup artist, Maya Landy, were driving down the last paved road before you get to the dirt top road leading into the swamp. And it was in the middle of the day, and this chupacabra ran out in front of them. And they were just both kind of blown away by it. I mean, it was, did you see what I see? Did we see it? Yes, we thought that was nothing else but chupacabra.
Now, that's awesome because, and there was a thing on it, and I'm going to throw this in here. There was a thing on Yahoo News about they supposedly had captured one, somebody did, and they had it in a cage, and, everybody was going all batty about it. It was on the news. It was on, I think, that News 5 channel. But anyway, I saw a picture of it in the cage, and it just looked like a mangy dog to me. But, the stories are out there, so if somebody actually sees a real one, then yeah, I'm interested. I like to hear about it.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure Shane and Maya both would be happy to talk to you about it because there was no doubt in their minds what they saw, and Shane pretty much he was excited about coming on to this Bigfoot project. He is kind of the right arm of our director, Jack Schuyler, very, very, very talented director from New York. And Shane is from Massachusetts, and he came down to be part of it with Jack, and he was so excited because he's a cryptozoologist anyway, in addition to being a very, very talented filmmaker. So he's got his eyes open in ways that most people don't who are working on a film. A lot of people would have thought, oh, it's just you're in Louisiana, it could be an armadillo or anything, but because of his knowledge in cryptozoology, he recognized it for what it was.
Right.
And they weren't. I mean, here we're out making a Bigfoot movie. He wasn't expecting to see a chupacabra run across the road.
That's what I'm saying. It's too bad they couldn't got a picture of it.
Oh, I know. And then Maya Landy, the makeup artist, confirmed it. I mean, she said, oh my gosh, I mean, here we are. And it just runs out in front of us. Yeah. There has to be a meaning behind this.
Yeah, that would have been great to have something to post on your Facebook wall, wouldn't it? I got a picture of a chupacabra.
But all as in everything else, here they're driving. And, it happened so fast, they didn't, neither of them had time to pull their phones or cameras out and to grab a picture of it. And that's what happens most of the time. It's just so fleeting that you don't have time to get your camera ready and get it going and snap it and wait those couple of seconds. It's gone.
Exactly. The only time I ever saw a live bobcat was the same way. Me and my sister were taking my nephew to his grandparents' house, which was out in the country. And it was nighttime. We're flying down the road there, and this sucker ran right out in front of us. And I had never seen a live one. That sucker was huge. And I'm like, that's a bobcat, like, wow.
Right. I know.
In all the years that I hunted, I never saw a live one.
And it's when I think sometimes, and that's the way with wildlife, it's when you least expect it. But I think it behooves us all to keep our eyes and ears open all the time, just because we don't want to miss that.
Exactly. Well, that was awesome, and I'd like to hear some more about some other projects you're working on. Let's get Mike in here, and he has a fantastic story, you guys. I would not want to have been in the position he was in. If you don't mind, Mike, kind of let everybody know what happened.
Okay, Roger. My encounter happened back in December of 1981. It was on a Saturday. It was on a Saturday.
Somebody want to ask a question, or?
Oh, no, I'm just calling in. I'm a acquaintance of Mike. I'm in East Tennessee. My name's Beth. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Beth, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'll just sit back and listen to you guys, okay? And then I'll chime in here sometime. Just go
hello,
ahead.
Beth. Okay, sorry about the interruption there. Miss Beth, glad to have you aboard.
Thanks a lot, Roger. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
My encounter happened back in December 1981. It was on a Saturday. It was a cold day, probably between 30 35 degrees. A clear day, real clear, no wind. It was a perfect day to go hunting. I usually get up about 4 o'clock and try to get on my deer stand around 5:30 in the morning, you know, while it's still dark, and give the noise and the scent and all that time to die down before daybreak, before, you know, the deer start coming through. Well, I woke up at 9:30, and I was mad, you know, because I overslept, had a hard week at work, and I was pretty upset at myself. Well, anyway, after drinking a couple cups of coffee, I said, you know, I got stuff to do around the house, and I'll go ahead and do it, and I'll just go hunt later on this evening. Well, I got all my stuff done, left about 2 o'clock, and I must have been hunting about 10 miles from the house. I was hunting on a state game reserve, pretty big reserve, you know, covered several thousand acres. And I turned off the main highway down a road, dirt road, secondary road, and I don't know, I went a mile and a half, 2 miles back, and there was an old logging road that come out from the left. They hadn't logged probably 30 years, but you could still tell, you know. The road went about a mile down and dead-ended, and it's really, really thick where I was hunting, really, really thick. There wasn't even a 50-yard open shot. I mean, it was real tight, woods just everywhere. But what I do, I drive down halfway down the road and park my truck, and always turn it around, heading out, just in case you had an emergency, you had to get out real fast. I've always done that. And so I did, and walked on down real quiet to my deer stand, which was at the end of the road, you know, and it was real thick, brushy back there. And I got on my stand about 3 o'clock, and I'm facing north about 12 o'clock. And I noticed that, you know, the woods were really, really silent, really dead. There wasn't no birds chirping or no crows calling or nothing, you know. And I've always listened to the woods. You know, the woods will tell you what's going on if you listen to them, you know, if you know how to read them. And so that kind of set a bad precedence. But, you know, I said, what the heck, you know. I've had luck when, you know, you think you wasn't going to have luck. But anyway, got on there about 3 o'clock, you know, and I'm looking to the north, and around 3:30, I think it was, this little young doe come from the east, and she was running just wide open. And when she got to my stand, she just automatically just threw the brakes on and laid down under my stand. She was actually touching my stand. I couldn't have got off the stand without having to step on her if I wanted to. And it was a lean-to stand, ladder stand, just leaned up against a tree with a logging chain tied around it to steady it and keep them from stealing it. Well, I looked at her and went for a minute and was thinking, you know, there's probably a big buck running. Knew the rut was on, and I said, you know, I better get ready because there's going to be a big buck coming, and I'll pop him, you know. Well, when I raised my head up, out of my right peripheral vision, I seen something jump behind a tree. And about that time I looked at it, I didn't get about a second or two look. I saw something really tall and big and black, hairy. And it hopped from that tree over to another tree, which is about 20 foot. And what was floored me it was standing up against that tree, and it hopped flat-footed. I mean, it didn't spring, like somebody's fixing to, make a long jump or something. You know how they'll bend down and then they'll spring up and jump. He didn't do that. I mean, he just jumped, got about 3 foot through the air, 20 feet, landed flat-footed behind this other tree about 3 o'clock. Okay, I'm looking at him to the right at about 3 o'clock. Probably about 20 yards, 15, no more than 50 feet. And, I'm sitting there like, what's going on, I never seen that like this in my life. And, it's standing behind the tree. It's a pretty good-sized tree, but, I mean, he's peeking at me with half of his face, but he's so big, so massive, estimated height 7 to 8 foot, 400 to 500 pounds. His shoulders are probably 33.5 foot across, and they're actually sticking out a little bit behind the tree. I'm looking at this thing, and I'm trying to make my mind up, am I seeing things or am I dreaming, So I closed my eyes and took some deep breaths, and I said, maybe this is just, I'm hallucinating. So I look back over there, and he's still looking at me. He's still there, and I'm thinking, my God, what is this? And I started, I got to thinking. I said, my I don't know if my brain or my soul was asking each other questions, but all kind of questions was coming through my head, like, is there a circus in town? No. Is a gorilla escaped somewhere? No. Just all kind of questions, just rapid and just no. Well, I'm thinking, what else could this be? And so back then the land was open land. Anybody could hunt on it. We had a lot of timber companies back then, Pacific Northwest timber companies, big timber companies that owned the land here in the South. And they didn't mind you hunting on it as long as you didn't tear nothing up or cut no trees. Well, it was first come, first served. And the problem that we would run into, if you got to a spot first and marked it and put your deer stand there, I mean, that was kind of yours. You kind of staked it. But people would come in there and see it and decide they want it, and then they'd do their darndest to try to discourage you and run you out. I mean, I've seen them tear stands down, burn camps down, try to scare people. And, that hit my mind. I said, maybe it's just somebody in a suit, and they're just trying to scare me off my stand, Well, I'm looking at this thing, and we've probably had 4 or 5 minutes at that time, staring at each other. And so, I tell him just to get out of here, take the mask off. It's a good way to get shot. This ain't no joke. And, this is a bunch of crap. Well, about a minute, he just steps out to the side of the tree. I mean, there he is, full glory. And when I see that, I mean, I'm blown away because this thing is massive. Just I can't describe how big he is. 8 foot tall, 500 pounds or more. And I was thinking, if that's somebody in a suit, he's big, and I might have picked a fight that I can't finish. Well, this goes on, and something just tells me, the voice, like something ain't right here. This is a real deal. You're in a situation, so be careful. Well, he's looking at me real mean, real mean. And I'll never forget, the eyes scared me more than his size, because those were some of the most evil, meanest, satanic eyes I've never seen. I've never had something look at me that horrible, that mean. I mean, I could tell he wanted me dead. And so I knew right then that, something's, and he kept showing me his teeth. And he would, open his mouth and kind of growl a little bit, low growl. And and he would put his teeth together and show me like that, you know, and blinked his eyes and stuff like that. And I just kept looking at the thing, and I knew right then that I was in a situation. I knew it wasn't human because where he come from was nothing but thick brush. It was briars, those big old thorn trees with them big 4 or 5 inch thorns that would cut you like a knife, and if you stuck one in you, you had to have surgery. Well, he come through that. And I knew a human couldn't come through that because I'd been back there trying to get through there to check out some deer spots, put a stand. I couldn't get back there. I had to try and come back. Well, I knew right then that, you know, I had a problem. And the thing looked so human. The face was so human looking. I mean, I just, you know, I've had sketches done of it. Isabella Christine Irwin out of San Antonio, Texas contacted me and wanted to do a sketch, and I think I sent it to you. And she did a really good. We did some work on it, and it took a while, but she nailed it. But anyway, the thing just stood there and put an evil eye on me, give me a low growl, and show me his teeth, and I didn't know what to do. I was froze solid. I mean, I just couldn't move. I mean, I was welded to that stand. And I never in my life been that afraid. I mean, old saying goes, my knees was knocking, my teeth were rattling. And I got really, really nauseated. My body was just trembling. And you know, I've never really had that kind of fear before in my life. And my throat got real dry. I couldn't breathe, man. My breathing was acting like it was trying to shut off. I felt like I had electrical tingle going over my body, you know, on the outside of my arms, you know, just touching it. And you know, I keep thinking, you know, please leave. You know, if you'll turn around and go back where you come from, I'll leave and I'll never come back. You won't have to worry about me here again. I'll be out of here. Don't worry about it. He wouldn't leave. I don't know if he was afraid, you know, if he turned his back on me, you know, I'd shoot him. But he had me so intimidated that deer rifle I had, I was afraid to shoot him because, you know, I said, man, if I make this thing mad, I'm in for it, you know. And I didn't know if that gun would take him down. He was so massive. So anyway, I'm sitting there thinking, you know, if this is a feral human, I really don't want to shoot this thing. I really don't want to shoot it because I don't know what it is. And if it's a feral human, I shoot it, I'm really gonna feel bad, you know. And I've done some reading up on feral humans and stuff like that, and before that, but anyway, you know, this thing's rolling on, and I see it's coming to a head because he's starting to get kind of froggy, you know, like he's wanting to run at me, and so I get to thinking, you know, if I'm going to have to shoot this thing, I want to make dadgum sure before I pull the trigger that, you know, this is not a human or a feral human or somebody like in a suit. Well, I turned my rifle scope. It was a 3x9 scope. I turned it down to 3 power because he was so close where it would be so blurry. So I looked through my scope at him and put the crosshairs right between his eyes, and I could see the steam come out of his nostrils and out of his mouth because it was so cold. Looked at his eyelashes, his face, big long face, wide face, big eyes, and I said, oh man, I'm in for it, you know. Well, he got mad, I guess, because I pointed that rifle and he roared. I mean, he throwed his head back and come forward with it, and it sounded like about 10 African lions right on top of you roaring, and I mean, it went through my body. It was like getting hit by a 70-mile-per-hour wind. If somebody would have been a mile from there, they'd have heard it. Well, that blew me away. I said, oh my, you know, I said, I'm dead. And all of a sudden, a whistle come back from the northeast about 100 yards to him. You know, and he looked over to that direction, and he looked back at me, and he whistled back, the same identical whistle, and kind of gave me a sheepish grin when he did it. And, you know, I've heard that whistle 100 times in the woods, and I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was a bird. Well, I heard movement coming from that direction, bipedal movement. And I thought, oh, man, something told me, you got to get out of here because he's called his buddy in, the troops. And what they're going to do when he gets here, they're going to overrun you because he knows that if he tried you single, that you'd probably put a bullet in him, but you can't get a bullet in both of them. And so, you know, something told me to get out of there. So I come down I stand from the front. I wouldn't turn around to him. And I got about halfway down, I jumped. And, you know, I was young back then, 150 pounds or so, and I could move pretty good, 160 pounds. But my legs, the first 20 feet, my legs felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds apiece. I looked back over my left shoulder as I was taking off, and here he come. I wanted to see what he was doing. I was hoping he was going to leave, but no, here he come. So I'm trying to get down this old logging road to the west to get to my truck, which is a half mile away. And he's running, 50, 75 feet to the left of me in the woods. And he's running through some of the thickest brush, briars, just trees, those big old thorn trees I was talking about, the 5 and 6 inch thorns. He was running through that stuff and just taking his arm and beating it back, you know. And I could hear him like, you know, and man, that was intimidating. And I said, oh man, you know, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Well, you know, it come across my mind, you know, what am I gonna do if they're up there at my truck? You know, if a couple comes from the west and I've got him from the east, you know, and I got 4 bullets in my gun, I said, you know, I'm done, you know. Well, I'm trying to look ahead of my truck, see if anything's up there, trying to watch him to my side, and, you know, I'm coming up on my truck, and I'm thinking, you know, when I start to unlock my door, he's going to jump me, you know, when I turn my back. So when I got to the tailgate of the truck, I just swung around to the left from the hip, didn't aim, and I pulled the trigger, pointed the gun that way and pulled the trigger. Well, the bullet hit an old pine tree, the back of the tree, about 7 foot up, and his head was about 3 foot from it. Another 2 seconds, he might would have caught that bullet in the head. I mean, it blew bark and dust in his face. I saw that. Well, I jumped in the truck, cranked it up, and I had an old heavy-duty truck, big engine in it. You know, it was designed for the woods, to play in the mud and go hunting and do stuff. And I was taking off, and when I come off the clutch and you know, was burning out of there, he come up behind my truck. And I looked in the rearview mirror, and I saw 2 big, long arms and big hands grab for the tailgate. And he almost got the tailgate. He missed it by about 1 foot with his hands. And I also noticed coming up the logging road was his buddy. And his buddy looked identical to him and same size and weight, you know. And I got out of there, and they come up together, and I seen them look at each other and then look at me. And I got on down to the other road and took a right and headed on back to the main highway and got out of there. And I know about a week or 2 later, I went over to a friend's house. His name was Wayne Easton. He was one heck of a deer hunter, a mentor of mine. He killed a 55-point buck. I mean, heck of a hunter. And me and him hunted a lot together. And I asked him, I said, you know, and he lived about 2.5 miles through the woods north of there. And I said, will you help me go back in there and get my deer stand, you know? And he said, well, it ain't raining, it ain't muddy. He said, you should be able to get back there and get your truck back there pretty close, can't you? I said, yeah, I can get, you know, probably 5, 6 foot, 10 foot from it. He said, well, why do you need me? He said, you can just unhook it and lower it back in the bed of your truck. And I said, well, you know, I kind of like to have some company, you know. And, you know, I hadn't told him nothing. I wasn't going to tell nobody nothing because I didn't want, you know, I was afraid I'd be, you know, humiliated. But anyway, we got back there, And the stand was a heavy duty pipe stand. I mean, made out of some real heavy duty stuff, man, heavy duty pipe. And I had a big logging chain with a big lock tied around it at the top, you know, to steady stand, keep somebody from stealing it. And that stand had been wrapped around that tree like a vine. And I mean, it was tight. I mean, you're talking about a 10-foot, 11-foot stand, and it was wrapped around that tree tight. I mean, whatever did it had to have some power. And he was looking at it, and he said, Mike, he said, who'd you piss off? And I said, I don't know, Wayne, nobody, I guess. He said, evidently you did, you know. I said, I don't know. And he got to looking, he said, look, he said, you couldn't have got a truck in here to do that, to hook a chain to drag it around, because there's other trees around this tree, and there's just not a room. You couldn't have got nothing in there. He said, 10 men couldn't have done this, you know. And he just got quiet. He didn't say nothing. On the drive back, he was real quiet. And I don't know if he was kind of let down in me because, you know, he didn't think I was telling him the truth or withholding something, but I just couldn't give nothing up. And, you know, come to find out, I talked to his wife a couple of weeks ago, and that was 32 years ago, and he went back, and he mentioned it to her. He told her about the stand, and she told me about it. And they just had a baby boy. He was only 2 months old, and she hadn't started back hunting yet. And she said, yeah, I knew about it. And I said, well, I didn't think he told anybody, because he told me don't say nothing about it to anybody. And so, you know, I didn't. And you know, I've had, you know, several other encounters, you know, stuff thrown at me in the woods, and I've seen some other creatures before. But that had to be the most horrifying encounter I've had. And, you know, people ask me, do I feel like my life was in danger? And I feel like it was, because they'd been chasing that little old deer for no telling how long. And number two, I pointed a rifle at him, and, you know, I blowed her cover. You know, I was up in the air, and he probably didn't smell me, and he was focused on that deer, and he run up there on top of me before he saw me. And that PO'd him, you know. So these creatures, you can't take them lightly. You know, this is serious business, and, you know, I tell everybody when you're out there doing your research and stuff, just be careful and watch your back. And, you know, don't go by yourself. Carry a strong sidearm, you know, 44 Magnum or bigger, because, you know, if one charges you, you're going to have something with some power to take him down, because if you could have been in my shoes that day and seen what I seen, you'd understand.
Now, you started researching Bigfoot kind of pretty much after that experience, though, right? How long did it take you before you started actually researching on them?
Well, yours probably took 30 years. I mean, that happened in 81, and a couple of years ago, I got with a friend, and me and him started going out together, and we did it probably a year, and I got hurt. I hurt my shoulder, and I'm still nursing that, you know, and you know, giving me a fit, and I can't really do nothing, so I'm kind of pretty much laid up, but, you know, I was still uncomfortable. I mean, I was very uncomfortable in the woods.
Now, we're probably going to be coming up on a break here soon. I don't know how far away that is, but I'd like to get your friend. You was telling me some interesting stuff about him. I'd like to get him to kind of speak up and tell us a little bit about himself and what he does. And okay, break's going to be coming up, and so we'll wait till after the break. We'll bring him on, and we'll let him tell us about what he does. And okay, that works. Okay, we're live on WCJV Digital Broadcasting out of Youngstown, New York. We're not going to break. We're just going to roll on since we got started late. if we could get your buddy there to come on, and I'm sorry, I'm so bad with names, but
Matt.
if
My
you
name is
could
Gary
come on
Wiggins.
here, tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do there, sir.
Okay, I live, my name is Gary Wiggins, and I live in Highlands, Texas, about 2 hours from the Sam Houston National Forest and also the Liberty County Game Preserve, which they basically touch one another. They reach across a huge wilderness area in there. I'm an archaeologist by trade. I've been doing archaeology for 30 years or so, and also history major, and I've written a couple of books, and I've done articles and periodicals, dealing with Civil War history and Texas history, things like that. And I had an encounter back in 1977 in the Sam Houston National Forest, which is located near Huntsville, Texas. If anybody knows where that is, it's out of state. It's part of it's kind of an extension of the what we call the Big Thicket area, and it has some wilderness area that's been classified as wilderness area. It's some old growth forest in some places, and they have a hiking trail that goes for quite a few miles called Lone Star Hiking Trail. But to get on to what happened to me, in 1977, I had a girlfriend with me, and I used to do quite a lot of camping up in that forest, and I had a little Montgomery Ward pop-up tent camper and a Toyota Land Cruiser Jeep, and we decided we wanted to regulations were kind of loose back then, and we decided we wanted to do a little wilderness camping, and so we didn't go to a regular maintained camp spot. I had found a trail where people had been going in and fishing along the southern end of Lake Stubblefield, which where it goes into Lake Conroe. I found a little clearing next to the lake, and I drove my four-wheel drive Land Cruiser on that little camper about dark back in there, and we parked. Had a beautiful view of the lake. And basically, my girlfriend and I, we were busy getting ready to set up camp. It had got dark. I had 2 battery-powered lamps that I'd turned on, and I was in the process of pumping up one of those Coleman lanterns. I put fuel in it. Sometimes they're a booger to get fired up initially. And, the woods, they have their own particular sound about them. They're kind of busy. There's noise, especially if you're by a lake. You can hear frogs and things, croaking. And the first thing I noticed is we had the lights on. We'd got a little firewood. We hadn't started a fire yet. We were still pulling things out. The trailer had a door along the side that folded down and had a storage area up underneath the actual tent part. And we were pulling stuff out. And first thing I noticed was, it just got suddenly quiet. Just almost like you could almost hear it. It's almost like the wind quit blowing, and the crickets and frogs, they just shut up all of a sudden. And that got my attention. It kind of unnerved me a little bit. I got to looking around, and Teresa, my girlfriend, she noticed it too. I heard then suddenly there was this big crash, kind of like a tree fell, and there was another big crash, and then the sound of breaking limbs and things like that. And from the direction, from the source of the sound, it was just really dark. When it gets dark in the thicket or in Sam Houston National Forest, I mean, unless you got a flashlight, it's as dark as 5 feet down a cow slope. I mean, you can't see nothing. But there was a little moonlight, and you could see the surface of the lake glimmering out there. And I took notice of this, and it seemed to be moving. These noises seemed to be moving toward me. And I looked up, and you could almost see some of those 10-inch diameter saplings, almost like they were being spread apart, almost like if you were going through tall grass or something. And I heard a growl and a kind of a cackle, and another growl, and it I don't know what it was. My hair stood up on my arms, and I left it. I just knew it was something bad. I told Teresa, I said, we got to go. We got to get out of here now. And, that was the fastest we'd packed up a camper. We just threw everything in, and we both got in that Land Cruiser and drove up to what they call Huntsville State Park, which is still part of this area, but where we camped this time, there were 100 people around us, That's basically my little encounter with it. All I ever saw of it was you could see a black shape of some sort or another back in the woods kind of coming my way, but it was just so dark. I didn't wait around to see what it was. But I've spent years up there, and back in the 70s and 80s, there was no internet, and there was no books on the subject. I had seen the movie Legend of Boggy Creek, but you always think that that's somewhere else. And, thinking back on the days that I had spent up there hunting and camping and all that, and hunting for Indian sites and things like that, I saw the sign. I saw trees snapped over and twisted, and I heard things. But, I didn't know. At the time, I didn't know what that was. I thought, well, that was the wind that did that. Or that sure is a strange sounding animal or bird, And you think back, they were all around me, and I just didn't know it back then. Until that day, and whatever it was extremely angry, and sure enough didn't want me in there. And so I squaddled out of there. That's basically it.
Have you ever, seen any alien spacecrafts or anything like that? Or, because a lot of times, I've seen lights, and like over in Liberty County, and I have it on DVD. A friend of mine that's lived down in the Caney River bottoms all his life. I call him the old trapper. He's trapped in there since the 40s. We set up a game camera in an area where he had a large hog trap, and because something kept springing his hog trap, because he put feed corn out on the ground, and he likes to trap those hogs out of there, and there's a lot of them. And the odd thing is and he said it would take a picture every few seconds over a period of a number of hours, and we got a video that runs 24 hours, and right about sundown till sun up, these shapes, these orbs, first one, then two, and a dozen, and before it's over with, there's hundreds of them floating around in this area. There's some that actually looks like they're having like streamers or trails left behind them, like they're going horizontal. Some of them are coming up out of the ground. Some of them are going into the ground. Some of them are just hanging around up in the trees. It's very peculiar, because he had called me, said, man, you got to see this. And, I went and I made copies of it. It's so entertaining. I had a friend of mine put a soundtrack of Good, the Bad, the Ugly on it, so it wouldn't be so boring, and sit there and the way we set it up is kind of like a slideshow. These pictures floating in and out on the screen. But there are a number of animals. There's several deer. There's a raccoon. There's various possum, various animals that come up and they're eating that. And in several instances, they actually turn and it looks like they're actually looking at whatever these things are floating around. And my friend Roy, he says, "Oh yeah," he says, "we've seen lights and things like that, for years. We just call them jack-o'-lanterns. We don't know what they are, but they'll suddenly appear and float around." And
There's another place there in East Texas in the thicket. They call it Bragg Road, and for years they've had these orbs that light up and float around will appear down by that road. In years past, teenagers, kids, they'd go park and they'd go down there. That was the thing. Go down, park on Bragg Road and watch for the ghost lights. But as far as flying saucers, I've seen. A few occasions when I've been out camping looking up at starlit night, and I've seen stars that flew across, were moving fast, and at first you think, oh, that's just a satellite. Then all of a sudden they'll stop, and they'll shoot back in the other direction, and you kind of look at your friend and say, you see that? I've never seen a satellite just about face like that before, shoot off in a different direction, But
well, satellites don't do that.
I have a question, Gary.
Yes.
Oh, if it's all right, Roger.
That's fine.
Hi, hey Gary, this is Beth in East Tennessee, Beth Patterson. We're friends on Facebook. And just hello to all of Debbie, Roger, and Mike, of course. Roger or Gary, are you down in the big thicket down there where Bob Garrett does his research?
I haven't. He's friends with me on Facebook. I haven't actually talked to him, but he lives, probably 45 minutes from my house. I live in Highlands, right on the San Jacinto River, and one fork, San Jacinto River, actually goes up into the thicket, up there into the San Jacinto National Forest. But
you're not
about an hour away from all that, and he's in the same area.
They're running thick down there, from what I understand.
Yeah, I see. I'm just telling you about my experience, and all of my friends have spent any time in the woods at all, in Liberty County and Montgomery County and all that area up there, San Jacinto National Forest. They've all had encounters. I have another friend north of Kennefic, which is on the west side of the Trinity River in Liberty County, and he had a deer lease with a couple other fellows, and he had an encounter in there. It shut off their four-wheelers, and something very grotesque, something that smelled really bad, came upon them. They were actually discussing, what stinks, and then it bored at them, and they said that the roar that they heard, I could almost feel it in their chest. They said it scared them. They cranked up their four-wheelers, went back to their cabin, little shack, and because it was starting to get dark then, and then the smell followed them up there, and then they started hearing the roars again up there, and they packed them up that night and left. And the next day they came back. They got everything. They broke down their feeders and everything. They packed them up. They let that lease go, and my friend Jason, he sold his four-wheeler. He doesn't hunt anymore. That was it. That did him in, But and I've had other friends. I've had other friends who've had encounters. I got one friend that actually lives. Their property backs up to San Jacinto National Forest. She's lived there 30 years, and they've had numerous sightings around their house. They had one time when it was real foggy. They had one come up, and her daughter came in her room, said there was something outside. You could hear it growling and breathing, and then they've actually been in their backyard and heard it roar at them.
Yeah. So, I know that sound very well. I had one roar at me one night. I've had a couple encounters myself, so yeah, that's a very unsettling thing to hear. It'll scare you to death.
Well, I think when I had my little encounter, the only reason why I didn't smell anything is I think the wind, the direction of the wind, I think was out of the northwest, and I think it was blowing whatever odor away from me.
Yeah, I didn't stick around long enough to you know, to get. So it was only about 20 feet away from him. But I didn't smell anything, but I definitely heard it. You know, it was very scary.
Have you ever heard them knocking on the trees and all that kind of stuff, or just the roaring sounds? Or
well, I just I've heard knocking sounds in the woods before, but I never really thought, you know, anything about Bigfoot till I had that, you know, those couple things happen to me. You know, I had that one standing behind a tree, and I live just about 30 miles east of Knoxville, Tennessee. So, and then 2 weeks later, after I walked out on the porch one night about 10 o'clock to smoke, and just right off the porch, about 20 feet away, was a fence row, and some trees lined the fence row, and there was a cow pasture on beyond it, and a farm. And I just walked out on the porch. I didn't think of anything being outside. You know, I never thought anything about it. You know, I just kind of went out the door pretty quickly and took a couple steps, and I just hear this god awful roar. Like it wasn't really like a lion's roar like Mike was talking about. It was more of a real deep guttural loud sound, just like a gruff, aggressive, like just a grunt, like, you know, just I think I must have startled it, you know, as it was walking up the fence row, because I mean, and I immediately threw my cigarette down and ran back in the house, and started locking the doors and the windows and yelling for my son. And he goes, he kind of, we peeked out the windows, you know, to see if we could see what it was. And he went ahead and walked out there probably 30, 45 seconds later, and it was gone. But then it come back 2 weeks later when I was out there. But
so you said that you heard a growl. What did it sound like again? Can you guys describe it?
Yeah, it was just a really loud, deep, guttural, like that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I heard. You know, instead of a howl or scream, T-Rex scream or whatever, mine, you know, he just growl at me, you know, several times, you know. And,
yeah, they'll do that. From what I've heard, you know, I've heard a lot of other people say that too. But then I've also heard people say that it was like, you know, they've heard him scream like a lion's roar, and I believe him. And that's what Mike said, that, you know, Mike says that, you know, about what that one did with him, and I believe it. And I've also heard some recordings that sound like that. But the dang thing, 2 weeks later, I had some neck surgery, and it wasn't unlike me to have to get up at night and just move around, you know, and I'd walk outside or, you know, just get up and move around. It was 3:30 in the morning. I stepped outside and sat out on the porch, and I immediately hear some footsteps coming off from my left, and it was coming up the fence row, and it was getting closer, and there was a little wet weather creek out there to my left, about probably maybe about 50 yards away. And I was telling myself, because this had just happened 2 weeks before that, and I kept saying, just stay where you are, and see if you can get a look at what this is. And the light was on behind me, and it was illuminating just the trees that was along this fence row. And I was sitting there, and then there was that little wet weather creek. It was about 20 feet from bank to bank. When this thing stepped over this creek, it didn't even break its stride. And that's when I got scared, and I stood up. And as soon as I stood there long enough to be able to see about 6 inches of its body, and then fear overtook me, and I just ran back in the house and locked the doors again. But I'd give anything if I'd have stood there, you know, and got a better look at it. But it was either a light brown or a gray color. But it was big. It was massive, you know. and it had hair probably 3-4 inches long hanging off of it. But that's what I've seen. So I mean, I wished I would have had the guts to stand there, but it was only about maybe 30 feet away at that time, and them things can be on you like I hear they move like almost like they're not, like it's almost paranormal or something, I mean, not really paranormal, but I hear they can move like a cat, that fast. Mike would know about that.
Hey, Gary. Now this is going to be addressed to Gary, Mike, and Debi if she's still here.
Still here.
Cool. Now Roger and I have been listening to some other Bigfoot hunters, and he seems to, with one in particular, seems to notice that there is a large activity of UFO when you're dealing with Bigfoot. Have you guys seen that?
Well, I can't say I have. There has been UFO activity in Liberty County. A lot of people have seen, but I can't say that as soon as somebody saw a UFO that they saw a Bigfoot. I had a couple of friends of mine that were out parking in a car down the end of the lane back into the woods, and they had one come up and actually bend over the back of the car and leer, kind of look into the back windshield, and my friend's wife screamed, or girlfriend screamed at the time, and he cranked up the vehicle, tried to back over it, and it turned and disappeared off into the brush. And then they took the women folk home and got a 30-30 rifle. They went back out there looking for it because they didn't see it again. And then I've had another person. She works for the sheriff's department there in Liberty County, and she was coming back from Anahuac heading for Liberty. She was about 7 miles out of Liberty on the state highway there. She had a little boy with her. He was 14. And something that she said, when it went to go across the road, it was down on all fours and had a pig in its mouth, but it was reddish brown fur. It was almost as big as her car, she said. It had glowing eyes. It was right at dusk. When the headlights hit it, I guess they were, kind of a reddish color or something. But she said it had a face that looked very similar to, she thought a hyena or a wolf or a dog. It had an elongated snout. And that's the direction it was headed. It came out of an area that was about 10 miles of just dense woods, and it went across the highway and was heading back into what we call the Liberty County Wildlife Reserve back in there. And it had this hog in its mouth, and she almost hit it with a car. She locked him up, and it turned and looked at her, and it scared her son so bad that he grew up hunting with his dad, and now he sits in his room and plays with his tablet or iPad or whatever it is. He don't like going out in the woods anymore. He was screaming, telling her, hit it. She's afraid it'd wreck her car, but a lot of UFO sightings by different people over in Liberty County, but Fort Bend County, but over the years. But I don't know anybody that actually saw a UFO and then right after had a Bigfoot encounter.
Well, I'm not saying that they're you have one and then right away you have the other, but I mean it's like where you're having a lot of unexplained UFO activity. You also have a few issues with cryptozoology.
Right. I'll tell you something I have seen on 2 different occasions, and I keep hearing about other people seeing it across the country, but I've seen some of these red fireballs. They seem to be traveling not way up in the sky, but across the sky. they're just bright orange, and then they just blink out. You know, I don't know what that is, and I've seen that twice in 2 different areas over in this part of Harris County.
We had 5 of those. It's been several years ago. I used to live out in the country, and there was a little country store out there, and I've talked about this on another show, but went out there one evening to get some cigarettes at the country store, and pulled up next to a car. Well, the lady was coming out of the store about to get into her car, and I just got out of mine, and we both looked up, and there was like 5 of these glowing orange balls just sitting there. And, you know, she's like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? And about the time I got yeah out of my mouth, they shot off, and within 2 seconds, they was out of sight. And I had never seen nothing like that in my life. Now, were they UFOs? I can't say that. You know, but I don't think we had anything like that. So,
were they bright orange?
They were bright orange, and it almost looked like I don't want to say fire, but they weren't perfectly round. It's like they were vibrating. You know.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And they shot off, and I mean, within 2 seconds they were gone. And we didn't have anything at that time that could move that fast. Number one, and not anything that I know of in that kind of shape either.
Yeah, this looked like these are traveling about 1,000 feet above the tree tops.
Well, that's about the right height, I'd guesstimate. And they were 5 of them, and they were in a straight line. And they were like, the distance between each one was equal.
Yeah.
It just looked like a line of these orange glowing vibrating balls just sitting there hovering.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they just shot off, and I mean, they were gone in the blink of an eye.
I believe there were 3, what I saw, there were 3 of them. One right after another.
But that's the closest thing, I guess, to a UFO I've ever seen. And like I said, I can't say definitely they were UFOs, but they definitely weren't anything we had. So where they came from, who knows? But they were just.
Well, I'm gonna jump in and say, Mike Wooley and I have, when we were on our research expedition in central Louisiana, we were responding to a call from 2 women who lived way out in the boonies. And it's probably about 20 miles from Natchitoches, Louisiana. And I can't speak for UFOs, but I can speak for, and Mike can vouch for this, that there was an enormous amount of paranormal, unexplained activity in that area, which could mean that it's a portal or some kind of, some kind of area that has this high level of activity. Unexplained events, like this fog descends on this small little town that's close to where these women live in the country that had been terrorized by these Bigfoot. And in one of the ladies' backyards, they had this camera, this protective camera, that took film of the backyard. And all of a sudden one day she and her granddaughter were looking at it, and they knew it was a backyard, but it didn't look the same. And they saw this soldier dressed in Confederate uniform come up to this one spot, and it was almost like this invisible boundary, and stop and then turn around. And they were absolutely flabbergasted. And the little girl said, "Grandma, what's that? What's that? That's not the backyard anymore." And she said, "Yeah, but it is, but it's just different vegetation." And it was obviously the same geographic location, but a different time and place. And when they played it back, it was blank. It did not show on the it did not show on the tapes, on the surveillance tapes for the property.
Well,
and
that's the known fact that a lot of times you won't get them on a camera unless they want you to.
Exactly. And this is the same place where this is the same woman that's been terrorized. She won't even sleep at night because these creatures bang on her house at night, and they growl and they roar. I stayed with her one night, and I heard them in the middle of the night, and it was terrifying. I thought I was going to get up and go look out the window and take videotape however I could. No, it absolutely terrified me because the vibrations, you know, this creature's huge, and they have some kind of ultrasound capability that affects you physically. It absolutely paralyzes you. And there is some kind of paranormal relationship here, because this is a place that has an incredible amount of reports of weird events happening. And like I say, this fog descends on this town of Goldana every single night, every day of the year. You know, no matter what the weather's like, it's amazing. And Mike can vouch for this. Aside and apart from the Bigfoot experiences, people there's also, you know, so many other stories of weird paranormal events that are unexplained. I mean, who knows why? It's a portal. Apparently, I looked back at some of the history of the town, and there's some articles written about a Red River rock that originated and they think it's a meteor, and it's made out of nickel, but it's from outer space somewhere, and it originally landed somewhere over in Texas, like near where you're from, I think, Gary, and somehow it was imported into this area outside of Natchitoches, Louisiana, central Louisiana, and, you know, when they brought it in, all kinds of strange things started happening. So that could very well be a connection there. If it's some kind of meteor and it's made totally out of nickel, I think it's now in the Yale Institute, the Yale Museum of Arts and Sciences at Yale University. I think they shipped it up there, and it, you know, a phenomenon that's really never been totally explained. But whatever is causing it, there's an enormous amount of Bigfoot sightings, and there are, which could very well be attributed to the swampy, forested terrain, or you know, all this other paranormal activity in the area. And Mike, jump in on some of these stories too, because I think you have some where you talked to somebody where this guy is up in the tree, and this woman kind of floats up. I don't know. I think you were telling me about that.
Roger, you remember me and you had a long talk one day about this. I told you that I'd go over there, and that place just give it a creep. Something wasn't right. You remember I told you about them, those people out there walking around in the yard, and if you were standing out there, you couldn't see it. But if you got on it, they had a camera rolling at all times, you know, inside the house, you know, trying to record everything going on outside. Remember I told you them black deals that was attached to them people's necks? And you
right,
said shadow people? Remember you said shadow people? Well, one of those ladies, I think Debi sent some paranormal people down there and said they'd come up with 4 ghosts in one of the house.
Yeah.
And not far from there, this lady from New Orleans was telling me, my son, when she told me about it, her family has a camp on Black Lake, which is not far from there, 35 minutes. And one day her dad and son were deer hunting in the woods. And they set a time to leave, and that time come, and the son said his daddy hadn't showed up. Hey, little Ronnie got worried, so he went over to the deer stand to see what was going on, if he was okay. And she said that her daddy was just frozen in his deer stand. And he was looking straight out. You know, he's up 10, 15 feet in the air, and he was looking straight out. And he walked over there and motioned at him. He didn't say nothing. And he walked up there real close to him, and he said he looked like he was just startled real bad, just really, you know, look at his face. And he asked him, he said, "Is everything okay?" He said, "I'm going to get down." He said, "Do you see anything out there in front of me? You know, about 15, 20 feet in the air?" He said, "No, I don't see nothing." He said, "Well, I'm looking at something." And he said, "You know, I'm going to get down, and I want you to get up here and see if you can see it." So the old man got down, the boy got up there, and he said, "Good Lord of mercy." You know, he saw it. And he said it was some woman, headless. She described the dress she was in. Some deal of, best says, some folklore goes way back. She got killed. Her husband killed her or something and cut her head off. That actually happened over in that area. So they swear. I mean, these people swear this is what they saw. Now, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know nothing. I'm just talking, you know, what I was told. And they swear to it, you know. And they're from New Orleans, you know, down around that voodoo crap. And they said that was it. They wasn't hunting there no more.
Well, you know, since you brought up that topic, I got a story that I personally was involved in. The fact that I'm an archaeologist, I get people to call me all the time. They've had some kind of sighting or whatever. I guess they call me because they think I will believe them and know what the heck they're looking at. But I live close to the San Jacinto battlefield here in Texas, and that's the site where Sam Houston in 1836 won Texas independence from General Santa Anna, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. And it was quite a carnage down there. They killed about 600 Mexican soldiers in that battle. And there's a lot of refineries now very near the park, actually almost bordering the park and extending on down for several miles. There's one chemical plant after another. It's highly industrialized because it's there on Buffalo Bayou and the San Jacinto River, Houston Ship Channel. And here I guess it's been about 3 years ago, I got a phone call from a friend of mine that's the head of safety for a refinery. I'm not going to mention the name because they didn't want any publicity about it much. But they're one of the largest producers of chlorine gas in Texas that they use for industrial purposes. And so they have a lot of security. Ever since 9/11, they have a lot of security around their plant. They have motion detectors. They have infrared cameras that can see in the dark. They have a lot of floodlights, and they have armed security all around it. Because if an individual was to sneak in there and set off a bomb, you know, it could be bad. You know, a bunch of chlorine gas released according to which way the wind was blowing. But anyway, they called me here about 3 years ago and asked me to come over to the building where they monitor, the security office, basically, where they monitor all their cameras. And the head of security was there. My friend, head of safety over a couple of plants, was there. The plant manager was there. There's a bunch of us. And they played this video. And what happened was, behind their plant, there's woods, and it extends all the way up to the battlefield. And where their plant is just within maybe a half mile of the actual park itself. It's a state park. And the lady that was watching the monitor said that all of a sudden her board lit up, and it was picking up some kind of motion. At first, they have deer back there, wild hogs. At first, she thought maybe, it was some deer that ran by there, set it off. But then to her amazement, she looked up at the monitor, and there was this. It looked like somebody had a big hat, had black pants, and a great big double-breasted looking shirt, carrying some kind of long rifle, some kind of gun, and he was walking along the outside back perimeter of their plant. There's actually two plants that sit back kind of side to side or kind of back to back, and one plant's cameras look at the back of the other plant, and then this plant looks at the back of the first plant. And this thing was walking along, but the thing is, you could see through it. You couldn't see its face, but it had a great big broad hat on, and it was carrying this gun, and it walked for a few frames in the camera, and then it stopped, and it turned and looked straight in the camera that she was monitoring. I mean, it was like it could see 100 yards or whatever. It could look right. It was looking straight at the camera, holding that gun, and then it just vanished. And immediately they sent security back there on four-wheelers. You know, there was no evidence. They didn't see anything. And, you know, they played that over and over and over again, and they just kind of looked at each other. They kind of looked at me, and I said, well, this is a battlefield. This whole area, you know, they chased the Mexican army all the way down past this point into a place they call Peggy's Lake. There were over 200 Mexican soldiers killed in that lake. They talked about how the surface of the lake turned pink from the blood, and they captured some 400 back there and brought them back as prisoners. So I said, you know, I don't know, but that was what I would call a full torso, free-floating vaporization is all I can tell you. And it scared that girl so bad that I think she transferred over to one of the other plants, you know.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've got a little bit distracted. Mike, when you were working on the movie, did you actually feel like you experienced Bigfoot there at the time y'all were filming, or?
Well, Roger, it was a perfect place for one. Where we filmed was in a swampy area. These people had a house back there, and you had to turn off a blacktop road, go down through the woods about a mile down this road to get to their house, and that was some of the creepiest woods I ever saw. There was a lake there. It kind of made a big horseshoe. It wasn't a big lake, but it was a pretty good sized lake, and it was real spooky, real creepy back there. I mean, you know, we went back there and done some other pickup shots on during the day, you know, and everything, and a year or two ago, and I really watched, you know, my back. But I talked to one of the guys that lived there. I asked him, I said, you ever hear anything at night, any hollering? He said, well, we hear coyotes. And I said, well, yeah. And he said, then he got to describing another sound to me, you know, and I told him, I said, you know, you need to kind of pay attention to that because I think you might have something going on around here. So it was way back in the boondocks there. It was way out in the woods. I mean, perfect, you know, place. A lot of cover. They had water there. Everything it needed.
I just think it would have been like really cool if you would have had a real actual Bigfoot in the film, you know, that you captured by accident, or, you know, he just happened to be in the area when you were filming and got caught on camera or something. That'd be pretty cool.
Well, you know, they're very curious. You know, when people go out camping, they'll come up at night and they'll stake your tent out and even come to people's houses, look through the windows, you know, to see what's going on. But, you know, we had all those people, movement, had a lot of lights out there that night, you know, to light, you know, up where we could see. And I wouldn't have been surprised, you know, because those lights bright, you could see for a long way, and it could have drawn them in there.
Kind of like bugs go to a light
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, would you care to tell the story about those Bigfoots that came in there and got that baby calf that night and the mama?
Oh, you talking about the cows?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There was a lady recently called me from Wisconsin, and she had heard me on the radio and stuff, and Facebook me and wore my number, and we talked, and she was telling about they had a dairy farm up in Wisconsin, way out in the middle of the boondocks in rural Wisconsin, and she said behind her house, they had a good bit of land, but she said behind her house, probably 50 yards, she had a little small barn built for the cows that were fixing to give birth to calves. She said they'd bring them in there, kind of give them out of the weather. You know, the weather gets cold, and take care of them and give them shelter, and they let them stay there with the calf till they felt like they were ready to go out. You know, and she said she'd had a cow in there, had a calf. Calf must have been about 3 days old, and she about one night, she said about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, she heard a racket outside. Heard a cow bellowing and started slapping around. So she said she had a light out there, electricity going to that building, and she had a light shining over the doors. It had double doors to it, and she said she stepped out there in the road to see what's going on, put her house shoes on, and she saw that the doors were open, and she said she knew something was up, you know, because she had shut the doors. And she said she got about 75 feet from there, and she said 2 big creatures come out. She said they had to duck. When they got ready to come out, they had to duck under the door to get out. They were hairy, 8, 9 foot tall, 500, 600 pounds, and said one of them was toting a calf. He had the calf. And so they shot all around behind the building and left. She said she went in there to see what all happened, and she said they had twisted the neck almost completely off of that cow.
Wow.
Hey, Mike?
Yeah.
Telling that story, I always liked that story you told about when you were younger, about that big bull you had out in the pasture. Your dad or grandpa, or whoever it was, had it in the pasture, and it had some kind of encounter with something that was meaner than it was.
Yeah, okay. Back when I was a kid, I'm 58 years old, and I started hunting when I was 4 years old. All this stuff's happened in a 54-year period. It's not nothing the encounters I've seen happen in 10, 15 years. You're talking 50-something years. But me and my dad used to go fishing down in my grandpa's pond, a big old pond, and him and my uncle raised these Bremer cattle. I'm sure you know what Bremer are. They got that big hump on their back, big old horns, and real mean cattle, especially the bulls. And we'd have our old boat, you know, behind us, and we'd turn in the gap, go down by the barn, and some mornings, old bull, he had a real mean bull. I mean, this bull was mean. I mean, he'd just sit there and just tear the ground up and snot out his nose and bellow at you. And he wouldn't let us get through the gap to get to the pond. And we'd turn around and go back out and get on the highway and go down the highway to another gap about a half a mile down the road. Daddy said, you know, we'll go in that way. Well, we got down there and he'd be standing there waiting on us. So we'd go back to the house, and my mother would say, you know, what y'all doing back so early? And Daddy knew the name of the bull. He said he wouldn't let us in. And I know one time, sometimes we would get in, and we'd be fishing, and we'd turn around and look, he'd be standing over by the car, and Daddy said, oh, Lord, you know, he ain't going to let us, you know, get out. Well, you know, the bull always was a problem. I mean, he just, you know, I mean, we left the boat there one night, and it was a aluminum boat, and pretty new boat, and it was probably 2 foot of it was on the bank, the rest of it was in the pond. And we got there, and he'd gotten a boat and stomped the boat. It was an aluminum boat. It looked like a beer can. I mean, stomped it flat in a daggone dime, you know. Well, he took care of that boat. We got another boat, and there were some guys went fishing down there one time, and they left their truck. One of them left the truck door open. That bull knocked that truck. He knocked the door off of that truck. It was laying out in front of the truck. But cutting back to the chase, I must have been about 9, 10 years old. We were fishing there one day, got in there fishing in there one day. And I don't know, it must have been about 4 o'clock in the evening. And the old bull, I don't know, he must have been off asleep somewhere. We come in because he didn't see us. He come in from the east over the hill, come down the pasture, and he was standing there looking at us. And then all of a sudden, he started snorting. And, you know, he had his throwing his front feet back, kicking up dust. And he just took off behind the dam, you know. And we're fishing probably, there's a big pond, and we're probably fishing 50 feet from the dam, 40, 50 feet from the dam, you know. We was across the pond. So he took off running behind the dam, and Daddy said he must have seen another bull. Somebody's bull must have got in here because he's really stirred up, you know. And, man, it all broke loose. I mean, we could hear it back there in the back. It was a heck of a fight going on. And, you know, we thought it was another bull. And we got to listening, and that bull was really in trouble. I mean, something was wearing him out. And he was just braying, and he was bawling, and he was a bad bull. And we could hear all kind of squealing and stuff, and Daddy said, you know, it must be a big cat got him, you know. And, man, this went on for a few minutes, and my daddy always carried a little Smith & Wesson 32 pistol with him for snakes, you know, something like that. And he pulled that gun out, and he shot twice in the air to try to break the fight up. And it quit, you know, it just got quiet. Well, he said, we need to get out of here. So we went and loaded the boat, and my uncle, he lived there, his younger brother, he lived there on the farm beside my grandpa, and he had a big welding shop. He did welding, you know. And as we were driving out and getting back on the road, the old bull was come limping up, and man, he was stopped, looked at him, he was bloody. One horn was broke loose up there, hanging up there at his head. One eye was just completely almost knocked out. Not to mention the cuts. He was dragging a leg. Back leg was broke. And so we got up to the welding shop, and my uncle stepped out and he asked my daddy, he said, Did you shoot down there? Did you shoot my bull? And Daddy said, no, I ain't shot your bull. And about that time, that old bull come limping up there. Finally made it. It was a pretty good piece up there to the welding shop. He had a big barn there behind the welding shop, a big heavy-duty fence around it. Old bull come up there. My uncle saw him, and he like freaked out. He said, something got hold of my bull. He was mad. And he immediately, he had a guy working with him, and he said, come on. So they went up to the house and got some shotguns, and he said, I'm going down there, and I'm going to find out what did this, and we'll kill it. And Daddy said, well, it happened back there behind the pond. And so they went back there, and he hunted all night. He had a lot of land, several hundred acres, and he rode around all night trying to find that. And he told Daddy, he said it looked like two bulldozers, the way the ground was tore up, fought back there. And my daddy, you know, he was a farmer at one time and raised cotton and cows and stuff. And he was a good, back then you didn't have vets. I mean, around, they were long ways off. And people couldn't hardly afford to get one out there, but you had to be your own doctor. And so my grandpa come out there and he said, oh, a big cat got hooked to it. And Daddy said, look at that bull's neck. He said, something had him in a headlock. You know, and he said, if a cat cut this bull up. And he said the claws would be close, and they would be kind of they wouldn't be as wide. And he said up here on his mane he'd been bit. He showed teeth marks, and he had an ear almost off. Ear was just bad out. I mean, my daddy was a good cow doctor, and he told my grandpa, he said, go get this, get that, get this. Anyway, he put some medicine in all the cuts and sewed the bull up. He worked on the bull for 4 or 5 hours just trying to sew him up. And as soon as he got through with him, I remember I was sitting there on the post next to the bull, and that bull was he was licking my knee, my leg, and let me pet him, and he would never let nobody get near him. That bull would not he'd try to kill you. He'd try to run you down. He was that vicious. And my uncle had some holding areas in his barn with gates that, he'd keep animals in when they were sick. And that old bull just automatically, nobody had to tell him nothing. He just walked in there, laid down. He wanted to be locked up. He did not want to be out. I mean, he wouldn't come out of there. And so there was a long talk about the bull, if he would be able to, breed the cows again because of his injuries, and the broke leg back there. And they doctored the bull up and got him where he could go again, but he wasn't fully back 100%. He wouldn't go out of that barn. He stayed behind my uncle's welding shop, behind the barn in that fenced-in area. He wouldn't go back out in the pasture. And I think they finally took him to the sale and sold him and replaced him. But, as far as what got a hold of the bull, we don't know. But, I don't know if there was something that was coming up behind the barn to look that heard us fishing on a pond, if it was coming to come check us out, and the bull spotted it and cut it off. I don't know. I don't know what it was. But, the bull had been put through the ringer, and I think he was fixed to lose his life when my dad shot that gun.
Well, I tell you what, I used to fish a lot on the river, Old Vine River down here close to where I live, and I had a couple of spots that I liked to go, and you never saw nobody else there. That's why I went to these spots, because I never was one that liked somebody horning in on my fishing hole. So I had a couple of spots that I went to, and I remember one particular day, and that's the reason I asked about the knocking earlier, because I remember one particular day that I was in one of these little coves that I went to, and to get down there to where I fished at, you had to come. It was like 10 or 12 foot below the top of the ground level, and you have to climb down there. It's pretty much straight up and down with some little footholds. And I'd gotten down there, and I got my gear all set up, and I was catfishing. And I kept hearing something like somebody hitting a tree with a stick. And this is a pretty good sized little woods. It's the river just kind of meanders around through it there. And where I was at was probably, I want to say, a mile and a half from the highway, a mile and a half, maybe a mile and 3/4 to get down there where I was. So, I knew it wasn't people. I knew it wasn't, I had seen deer out there before. I knew it wasn't deer, because even, a rutting buck doesn't make that kind of sound. It sounded like somebody with a log or something hitting against the tree. And it sounded kind of really close to me, and I started getting a little bit, jumpy, because I had heard that. I'd watched videos on it, I'd heard about it, and I'm thinking, could we actually have a Bigfoot out here? And It was after that when I told you about the young guy that told me the story about seeing what he called a little toe out in the woods. About 6 foot tall, maybe, fair face, hairy all over, but it looked like his face was like dark or black. And after he told me that, I'm thinking, well, if it's possible for one to be over there, it's possible for one to have been out there. Were they signaling, another one that, hey, we got supper sitting down here below the hill, or I didn't know, but I hadn't been there probably 30 minutes when I heard that, and it didn't take me another 30 minutes to pack my stuff up and climb back up the hill and get out of there.
Yeah, I think I think that was a couple of Bigfoots there. I went hunting one time in a new area, and I was hunting on this pipeline. It's the area where the pipeline's underground. You can see a long way. I was deer hunting, and I come along some woods that had a few trees off to the edge of the pipeline, and I said, that's some pretty good cover right there, and I can get a long shot down here if something comes out. And I heard, that's before I had an encounter, and I didn't know what this was, but I knew it wasn't right, whatever it was. And I heard some I guess it was some kind of language going on back and forth, but one was on the right side where I was at, and the one was on the other side of the pipeline. And it was like years ago when we was a kid, when people had throat cancer, they had a machine they had to put up to their throat. And you know what they sounded like? It was kind of well, I heard that. And some of it would come from the right side where I was at and go over to about 50 yards. Something was on the other side, and it, it'd wait a while, and it'd signal back, and well, something told me to get out of there, because it was on each side of me, and I left. And that was one of them deals where, don't know what it was, but I just had a bad feeling, and I got out of there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to see something to have enough sense to know to move. You know what I mean? If I am familiar with what a certain thing sounds like that could possibly be dangerous, or I even sense that there's something around me that could possibly be dangerous, I will move. My gut tells me get the heck out of there. Whether it was or wasn't real. If the sense says go, I go.
Well, I just got a bad feeling. I never heard that before, and it was weird, hearing it, because you could tell it was talking to something else on the other side of the pipeline, and I was in the middle, and I don't know if it was talking about me or what, but, something told me to get out of there, and I got out of there.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You don't, I didn't hear an answer when I heard the knocking. I just heard one close to me. But I had seen, enough of the documentaries and stuff about it where, people were out there looking for them and copying what they do, that I knew what it sounded like.
Right,
yeah, I had to go.
Right. Well, this was back probably in the late 70s, probably 2 or 3 years before 1981, before I had that encounter where I got, chased off my deer stand. I really didn't know nothing. I really didn't believe in Bigfoot. Never had no problems. Never, I've had stuff thrown at me, rocks thrown at me, limbs thrown at me, but I didn't know. I didn't see nothing doing it. So I just went about my business, and but that day something just told me to get out of there.
Yeah, and I got to the point after that. I mean, I love my fishing holes now because I caught some nice catfish down there. But I wouldn't go back down there by myself, and I used to always go by myself. But
All
I'll
right, guys. I'm gonna have to leave you all. It was nice talking to y'all. Thanks for answering my questions, and you all have fun.
Well, thank you for coming on. You have yourself a wonderful night.
You too.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
But yeah, I made sure I took a friend with me or something from then on if I went down there fishing, you know, because if I heard something like that again, I wanted to make sure I had a witness. You know, and I'm going to say, look, you know, I know what that sound means. Do you know what that sound means? Now, if you want to go for it, we will, but I don't suggest it.
Well, you know, you really need two people where he can kind of watch your back and you can kind of watch his back.
Exactly. That's the main reason right there. I had deer come up to me, not up to me, but when I was down there in that spot one time, I kept hearing something trotting around up on the top up there, you know, and I thought it was squirrels playing because you hear that all the time in the woods. And so I'm sitting down there fishing, and I kept hearing this trotting around, getting closer, and I happened to look up, and there was two fawns standing up there on the top of the hill looking down at me. But that just shows you, you know, that they can sneak up on you. If something wanted to get up on you, they could. And when you're down in a spot like that, the only other option I would have had would have been swim the river, because I wasn't going out the way I came in.
Well, you know, I can't stress enough to everybody about these creatures, how fast they can move, how swift they can move, and how stealthy they are. I mean, they can be up on you before you know it.
Well, you know, when you was talking about, you know, when you had your encounter and everything, and you was talking about the one that jumped flat-footed from one tree to another, you know, it wouldn't have been nothing for one to jump from the top of that hill to down there where I was at, you know, and I wouldn't have had time to went anywhere. So.
Oh yeah. I listen to a lot of other radio shows, and where people actually had encounters, and man, they said they've seen them jump off banks 10, 20, 30 foot in the air and just spring when they landed and just hit it running, you know, well, that'd kill an average person.
Oh yeah. But Sonya just typed in the chat room there that they're seasoned hunters, and that's how they survive, and that's true. And you don't think they survived all this time without being found or being captured or being killed because they're stupid. They're not, you know. If one wanted to get to you, I believe they could actually get to you, and you wouldn't know they was there until, you know, it was too late.
Well, Roger, these are some of the most elusive and smartest creatures out there. These creatures are very intelligent. It's almost like they can read your mind. You know, nobody's brought one in yet. There's one I know of has been put on the table and had autopsy done on it. Because I'll tell you why. Where you see one, there's going to be another one. And trust me, if you shoot one of them, you're going to have his buddy to deal with. And if you get through him, trust me, there'll be more. And it'd be just like having being attacked by a bunch of Indians, man. I mean, back in the old Wild Wild West, you know, what they used to do. And these things stick together, and they watch each other's back. And if you mess with one, you mess with all, trust me.
You're definitely not messing with Harry and the Hendersons on this case. You know that.
No, definitely not. You know, I watched that movie, and since you brought that up and everything, and I was thinking, yeah, you know, if I ever run across Bigfoot out in the woods, because I used to spend a lot of time in the woods, and I was thinking, you know, now that would be cool. You run up on Harry out in the woods, you know, he's all smiling and you know, laid back, easy going. Yeah, right.
Never happened, buddy. Never happened.
You gotta realize these are wild animals. You know, people call them forest people and stuff like that. You know, if you could have been in my shoes that day, I think you'd have changed your tune from forest people to savage. These are just they're some kind of creature that hadn't been diagnosed yet what it is, but you've got to respect them and give them their space, and don't fool with them. Leave them alone, because if it's just don't mess with them. All I can tell you is just because it's a fight that you ain't gonna win. I mean, you'll die.
That's what I figured. I ain't gonna put myself, if I can help it, in a position like that. And I used to do it all the time and never gave it a thought. You know, and then after I heard that day, that kind of changed my tune a little bit.
We've got some hunters out here in Pierce County in Washington. In fact, there's some are even out here in Oregon also. It seriously makes me wonder, what are they thinking? It's not like some of us who are actually out there doing ghost hunting, paranormal investigations, even though you figure cryptozoology falls under that same heading.
I just know that I know that patch of woods that I was telling you where my young friend there claimed that he saw. He called it Little Toad. He was making fun about it. He said because it wasn't, you know, it was about maybe 6 foot tall. But the way he explained it, he said it was coming down through the woods. He said he heard it. He was with his uncle, and his uncle was in a tree stand probably about 300 yards, 400 yards on up in the woods up there. And he said, I was just sitting there kneeled down, and he said, I kept hearing something, footsteps, you know. And he said, I knew it didn't sound like any kind of animal that I know of in the woods, you know, a 4-footed animal, or, you know, he said it sounded like a person walking. And he said he looked back and he saw this thing, and he said he freaked out. He jumped up and he started running towards where his uncle's tree stand was. He said when he looked back, he said it had come down about almost to where he was squatting down, but he said it turned and went over the hill, and he said 4 or 5 steps and it was gone. You know, I mean, just gone. And I mean, I believe he saw what he thinks he saw, but and I've been in that little patch of woods he's talking about. Well, I say little, it's not really little, but it's probably maybe a 4 or 5 acre woods there. And yeah, it would be really easy for something to hide out in there. You know, I mean, there's a creek that runs through it, you know, with fresh water most of the time, and there's all kind of wildlife. So yeah, I mean, and you know, the wild berries and all that kind of stuff. Something could survive there really easy.
Well, that's an ideal spot.
Can I say, can I inject something here on the paranormal side regarding these Bigfoot? If you Google giants in the Bible, or if you go, you can just Google Nephilim. What are Nephilim? In the Bible, there's references to giants all the way through the Bible and all the way back into the book of Enoch, and I think they're something that's always been with us. They're all over the world, but it's kind of interesting. The Bible talks about how back in the before the Great Flood and all that, they said it says that angels came down and had sex, or took women as wives, had sex with them, and from their offspring were giants. It makes a lot of references to that. They were actually part angelic and part human or flesh. And
right, I remember
I think some of these things might be the actual descendants of these Nephilim.
And that's a possibility. Now, and other people claim that they're descendants of Giganopithecus, and
yeah, but he might be descendant of one of the Nephilims.
Exactly. Giganopithecus was bigger than what the big feet are.
Right, exactly. And what's interesting is supposedly that was the reason for the reason why God destroyed the earth initially with the flood, was to eradicate these things. However, there must have been something got on the ark or whatever, if you believe in that sort of thing, because they show up again in the Old Testament during Moses' time, and after the flood. I mean, one particular time Moses sent scouts up into a particular area of the Promised Land, and they came back and said it was overrun with a race of giants. He talks about that we were like grasshoppers. If you read that part of the Bible, it says we were like grasshoppers to them, and that they ate human flesh. So, and then there's a story. You can go back in the pioneer days during early explorers. The Indians in Canada, I found a reference to them. They used to tell the early explorers that came into that area to be wary of the race of huge giants that consumed human flesh. It seemed to populate the area of the Northwest up there, So there's an account where Cadeza de Vaca, he was a Spanish explorer, was shipwrecked on Galveston Island in the 1540s. And it took him 7 years to make his way back to Mexico City. And he lived with various Indian tribes in Texas. And in his papers, his personal journal that he kept, there was one Indian tribe he lived with that he said that was, he had a Spanish word for it, I don't remember what that was, but said that tribe was attacked by a race of hairy giants that were really fierce, and actually he also said they consumed human flesh. So then you start looking at, if you go Google and you look at these books called Missing 411 that's come out about all the people that's come up missing in all these national parks and forests throughout both western United States and eastern United States, you start to wonder, because some of the cluster areas, both in the west and in the east, that he talks about in these books, they have a history of people coming up missing in a particular area. So it kind of rules out some axe murderer or some crazy guy living out there, unless his family for generations have been doing the same thing. And all the missing people, the criteria or the circumstances are very similar. And if they do find a body, there's usually just a few bone fragments. Something is taking people in these forests. I know here in the Sam Houston National Forest, my friend that lives up there, Joan that, there's people that come up missing all the time, but it seems like the Park Service, after they do an initial search, and if they don't find anything, they just kind of sweep it under the rug. It's like the government, they don't want anybody making waves. They don't want it to get out because it'll affect, the tourism. They make money off of all the people that come up there and use the forest, and also it would also affect timber companies and various other people. A lot of people stop going hunting. But
right.
Something weird's going on is all I can tell you.
I'm gonna bring up the broadcast letters again for everybody. We're live here on WCJV Digital Broadcasting out of Youngstown, New York. We're running over because we started late, so everybody hang in there, and we're just going to do this thing till we're done. But anyway, I was going to ask you, since you're an archaeologist and everything, and we're talking about the giants, I'm sure you're up on the skeletons they've been finding and everything, 12 foot, and taller. I mean, is this the real deal, or is it,
they have uncovered skeletal remains of extremely large creatures, humanoid-looking creatures, all over the United States, and but because it kind of goes against the common belief system that they're trying to teach everybody, a lot of it is just kind of suppressed. The archaeologists know about it. It comes out in some of the archaeological journals, incredible, large humanoid-looking skeletal remains being found here or there, and have been for years, but they just don't put much out about it.
Well, I've seen some pictures of where they had dug up some of these skeletons and everything, and how do I put this? If a person or persons wanted to push a belief, so to speak, and they felt like they were losing the battle, they could create something like that to prove their point, so that these people going around, being non-believers or whatever, would change their tune. Therefore, I have to ask that question, were they real, or were they something somebody concocted just to, try to validate themselves? Or
some of the archaeological reports that I have seen, they were real, in my opinion, and they weren't made. They weren't trying to push an agenda on anybody, because they weren't really made public. It was the inner circle of archaeologists that saw them, and there's even a few archaeologists that refuse to believe what they see. There might be some that weren't involved in a particular dig or whatever that might scoff at it, but I don't see what they were finding. I don't see where they were accomplishing anything if they were trying to fabricate something, because it didn't really make the general public all that much.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I saw a couple of pictures about it, on a little bit of a write-up, but it didn't seem like it went mainstream or anything like that.
And because of that reason, what point is it? It wouldn't have played to, if they had an agenda, it wouldn't play to that at all, And I'm a firm believer in the Bible, and I still hold the Bible in the fact that, for centuries, going back thousands of years, they always make reference to huge giants. And
right.
It's Bible, it's in the book of Enoch, which was before the flood, and it's not part of the Bible, but the Bible makes references to that, and you can Google that and read what it says. But if in fact these things are descendants of what they call nebulans, then they have a supernatural side to them. Not that they necessarily can fly or dematerialize, but they seem to have some psychic kinetic powers or some kind of psychic powers. They maybe this infrasound that they do use, maybe that's the part that they've inherited that can debilitate an animal or somebody, even a human, that it's directed at. They seem to have superhuman strength, which is talked about in the Bible. These things, especially ones in the Northwest, those boys are big. Them buggers, some of them are over 10 foot tall, and they're very stealthy. And all the Indian cultures throughout the nation, they all have references. They just call them the forest. The people of the forest, and even Teddy Roosevelt made reference to one of his some trapper he knew, got killed up in the Bitterroot Range. There's just an account after account after account. Early days of the fur trade, and some of those records, if you go back and you look at them, the Hudson Bay Company and all that, if you go and do research, you'll be reading a ledger book where, some group is out trapping somewhere in the Northwest, and they'll make us just a references and encountered, a large group or single or huge, large, hairy apes, who threatened us or attacked us or whatever, So to me, there's plenty of historic background, and these skeletons that they dig up in various parts of the world and try to say that they're we're descendants from some of this giant apes or whatever it is. I think they're actual the forefathers are the actual skeletons to what we have now.
Right. Now,
and there's several varieties of them.
Did you ever hear references of 40-foot tall giants or whatever? Because I've heard that a few times too.
Yes, there's some other places I've read of that. I haven't seen anything where there currently exists where they're 40 foot tall. The biggest or the tallest I've seen is 12, 13 foot, whatever it is.
Right, that's what they discovered. But now I can't even remember exactly where I found that at, but it was talking about some of them were 40 foot tall or better. And
there's some skeletal remains down in Central America that were found that way.
Could you imagine being here and being as we are and having to try to coexist with a 40-foot tall human? Or not, well, they wouldn't necessarily be human, but...
Well, in the Bible, I think there's references to a 40-footer. Hell, maybe they're the ones responsible for the pyramids,
Exactly. And somebody like that, if you had a race of people that big, it wouldn't be too much for them, probably a couple of them, to pick up a 10-ton block and put it in a place,
Right.
So yeah, I could kind of see that. But
there's a lot of interesting information, and if you Google Nephilim or giants of old or giants of the Bible or any of that, there's a lot of good websites. There's even there's one site. A guy, his name is I'm trying to think. His name's I think it's C.H. Quarterman. He's an evangelist or end times prophecy professor and pastor or whatever. But he actually saw a Bigfoot. I think he's based out of North Carolina. He actually saw one cross the road in front of him in North Carolina. And he has a site where he actually says that that's what he believes. And he's one of these Bible scholars or whatever. And he believes that what he saw, it was a hairy, 10-foot tall Sasquatch. But he believes these are the grandchildren of the Nephilims of old. And
that's
of course,
what I was just going to say. Could they possibly be descendants from the giants of the day?
Right. But their DNA, their genetics is carried on, because it says also in the Bible that they had these angels or that these fallen angels that had sex with women. They also had sex with animals. So that might also explain some of these creatures that have an animal-like appearance. So, and who knows? It might be still going on, because in Revelations or in the New Testament, it refers to the fact that in the end times, as it was in the time of Noah, so will it be. It talks about like a reemergence of this stuff.
Well, you have to wonder where the Egyptians came up with all the the statues that they did and the drawings that they did, or the not drawings. What's the word I'm searching for here? The writings on the walls and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Or whatever, half animal, half human, different types of.
What's interesting is when you get into some of these early civilizations like that, and even Canada, you're in East Texas, or you can go down to the Mayans and Central America, the Incas, all that, and their pottery that they did they would have drawings and paintings and actually make little pottery vessels in the shape of animals. And what's interesting is you find paintings and pottery that are in the shape of prehistoric dinosaurs that we know about now through their skeletal remains. And it makes you wonder if maybe at some point they actually saw some of this kind of stuff, because they didn't have books, they didn't know what we knew, they didn't go out digging up skeletons, and and they make a perfect little clay sculpture of a triceratops or something. You know, where'd that come from? You know.
Well, now, see, I firmly believe in, you got a lot of the different Indian tribes and all that, and this goes back to the UFO reference again. In the caves and stuff, and on the cliffs where they drew their paintings, and they would draw pictures that looked like men in suits, you know, space suits, and they would draw pictures of things that looked like flying saucers or spacecraft, and they didn't make stuff up like that off the top of their head. They drew what they saw.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, there's a cave out in West Texas called Panther Cave, and I think you can go online, and they have it fenced off, and you have to get there by boat. And at certain times of the year, the Park Service open it up where you can go up there. But in Panther Cave, there's a wall painting that's kind of interesting, where it looks like a whole group of Indians are throwing spears at what looks like a flying saucer, you know.
Now that would be
spears at it. It's really cool looking, you know.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, a buddy of mine went up there. He took a picture of it. He's trying to find it. He was going to send it to me. Like maybe one of these things came down and kidnapped one of their people out of their tribe, you know, and they're chasing after it, throwing spears at it or something.
That would definitely be interesting to see. You know, but what gets me is, like I said, though, you know, you can be looking at the clay cave drawings or whatever, and you may see a group of Indians throwing spears at a mastodon or whatever, or you know, a wild animal.
Right.
And then 5 foot over, you'll see like a spacecraft or looks like a man in a spacesuit. Now, they were drawing all these things as they saw them.
Right.
You know, depicting, you know, their hunt for this animal, or maybe it was a hunt they went on and they killed a certain animal. Well, while they were there, they saw this thing in the sky, you know, or,
right.
You know, this person in a that looked like he was in some kind of a suit or something.
Well, that's why I was saying, you know, when they do these drawings or they do some of this clay little figurines and all that, and it's shaped of, like I'm using this as an example, a triceratops or some kind of creature like that. How do they know what that looked like unless they actually saw it? Because, you know, they didn't have books back then. They didn't have what we have, as far as I know.
It makes sense because they weren't educated. They didn't have books. They didn't, you know, unless they saw something, they wouldn't have drawn that. And it all kind of, you know, and so, you know, I have a belief that extraterrestrials were coming here back in the day, and although it might have been giants that built the pyramids, I kind of believe that there was some help from beyond, because I was just talking about this with Sonia, who's on here. She's a friend of mine. I think it was Sonia I was talking to. I can't remember. I lose my track of things. But anyway, there's some blocks in a place that is older than the Mayan pyramids and all that. And they were so perfectly cut that there's no possible way it could have been done by a man with a chisel. I mean, they were cut with grooves that fit perfectly to interlock with each other. And, you know, there's like drilled holes in there that were perfectly drilled, and they didn't do that with a chisel. So, you know, I have to believe that they had tools. Now, they may have done the actual work, but they had the tools and they had somebody that could teach them how to do it.
Well, according to the Bible, the extraterrestrials, if I can say it right, according to the Bible now, they're saying that they're fallen angels because, you know, they're not like in hell somewhere. They were kicked out of the third heaven, and they exist here on Earth and also in the space environment. You know, that's the second heaven according to the Bible. That first, second, third heaven, and they still retain their physical body. They can manifest themselves however they want, and these craft you see, these flying saucers or whatever, you know, most of your evangelists and various people that study Bible prophecy, they all feel like that these are the fallen angels that are actually trying to deceive us to think that they're from Mars or wherever, you know, some foreign planet or whatever, and that these fallen angels actually were the ones that taught some of our ancestors, you know, various things, you know, about war and how to make tools and all these things, you know, and you know, of course, it's all condemned by God, is what it says, you know, but they're here until the day of judgment.
Right. Now,
and then when you get into, if you read out of the book of Enoch, it talks about that that's where these giants of old. It talks about when they die, that because they are created from the holy watchers, which were the 200 angels that came down, that were cursed by God, that came down, had intercourse with women, and had offspring. It says that their souls cannot enter heaven, that they become like clouds here on earth. They're invisible, and they will be called evil spirits. And it says they will be here to corrupt and tempt and raise havoc on mankind until the day of judgment. That's what it says. I'm trying to pull up the exact reference here on my tablet, but it's pretty interesting. You know, it's if you believe in that sort of thing, it's also kind of scary. Let's see. I'm gonna bring up the actual quote. I'll read this to you when I get. I'm almost there.
See, that brings up another question with me too. When you're talking about, you know, the third heaven and all that.
Well, let me just. What?
God created the earth, right, and the humans and the animals and the.
Right.
So.
He also created the fallen angels, you know, like Lucifer and all that, you know.
Why could he have not created life on another planet before this one, who were by now more advanced than could be coming here?
Well, and I'm not gonna argue that point. He very well could have. But let me just read this to you. I pulled it up real quick. This is out of the book of Enoch, and which the Bible makes references to, but was not when King James and his crew put the Bible together, put all those books together. It was not included. But I'll just read this real quickly. It says, the origin of demons. And it says, my judgment for the giants is that since they are born from the flesh, they will be called evil spirits and will remain on the earth, because they were created from above, from the holy watchers, that's these angels. At death, their spirits will come forth from their bodies and dwell on earth. They will be called evil spirits. The heavenly spirits will dwell in heaven, but the terrestrial spirits who were born on earth will dwell on earth. And it says the evil spirits of the giants will be like clouds. They will affect, corrupt, tempt, work destruction on the earth, and do evil. They will not eat or drink, but be invisible. They will rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. When the giants die, their spirits leave their bodies, their flesh will decay without judgment. And that's in the book of Enoch, you know, and that's kind of scary when you read something like that. So however you want to interpret that, what are we actually seeing out here? You know, what are we confronting? Both in the space, you know, up outer space, because that's the second heaven, or here in the forest and mountains here on Earth. You know, because there's references to these giants that go back thousands of years. So, you know, we might be getting a double jeopardy here. Not only do we have live ones that are actual human, actual animals, but that can be very violent at times. But when you kill one of them, according to this, their spirits leave them and then become evil spirits or shadow people or, you know, demons or whatever the heck, you know. According to this, you know.
Well, see, there's a whole lot of different ways that you can look at some of that stuff. And,
right.
You know, now, don't get me wrong, you know, I believe in God, and you know, I'm a saved Christian. I don't always act like one, but I am. And I've read a lot of that stuff in the Bible that you're talking about. But I also have questions that I have asked God himself. He hasn't gave me an answer to yet, like the one I asked about, you know, did he create life on another distant planet that maybe preceded us, that would be far technologically advanced by now? Because you see how fast our technology is booming.
Right.
That could be like far more technically advanced than we are, who could be coming here, and you never know, maybe he even sent them here.
Well, one thing you got to remember about these fallen angels, whether they were the ones with Lucifer when he was kicked out of heaven, or this group of 200 that came down and had sex with women and then had offsprings or whatever that they call giants. They've been around for millions of years, and they're highly advanced and extremely intelligent, you know, so they could very well also occupy another planet, because once again they're out there in outer space. They're in the second heaven as well as down here on Earth. They can go anywhere they want to, and you know, remember, and they were all created by God according to the Bible. So they're not dummies. So, you know, I'm sure they have the ability to travel over time and space.
Well, I mean, that's the whole purpose of my questions, is just to get, you know, different ways of looking at things out there, because, you know, it could be this way or it could be that way. It could be yin or it could be yang. And
right.
We don't know this, and we won't know this until the judgment day comes. You know, we're not going to know.
Both yin and yang too.
Exactly. We're not going to know what the plan is until it's time for us to know what the plan is. So,
exactly.
You know, so all we do in the meantime, being, you know, seekers of knowledge that we are, is ask questions. And, you know, if you don't, if you have an inquisitive mind, which I do, I've seen things that I can't explain. I hunt ghosts. Yes, I have captured a entity on camera. I have voices that you cannot disprove. And knowing that tells me that there's other possibilities. And, you know, I kind of feel like, you know, God in his excellence, he does what he knows to be right. So if he did create another race on another planet before, you know, he created the earth in the form that he did, you know, say if it was a day to God is like what, 10,000 years to us?
I couldn't quite understand that last.
I said, isn't according to the Bible, isn't a day to God like 10,000 years to us?
Is that 10,000? You talking about the age of the earth?
No. I'm talking about one day to God is like 10,000 years our time.
Oh no, 1 day to God is like 1,000 years to God.
Okay, 1,000. I knew it was something about 1,000, in the thousands or something. But
yeah,
if
I'm sorry, you were breaking up there. It was hard to understand what you said. I don't know this connection.
If he had created a planet of beings before the Earth, before he created what he did here, he could have done that in 1 day to him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, which would have been 1,000 years ahead of us.
Yeah.
So, I can see where they would be a lot further advanced than what we are.
Yeah.
And
Well, according to the scripture, he just spoke it, in the entire universe. Everything you see was created, and then he concentrated on the earth, because it says in the beginning the earth was void, was without form, and
right, that's what I'm saying. He could have done that on another planet before he did that here.
Oh, absolutely. I don't doubt that a bit,
And they would be so much further advanced than we are. They would be, if it took him, like, the Bible says he created the earth, and on the seventh day he rested. So that means he spent 6 days creating the earth and everything in it.
Right.
So if he spent 6 days creating another planet with life on it, that would have been like 6,000 years us.
Right.
That's a long time to grow and evolve, okay? So, yeah, I would see where they could come here and say, well, you people got a lot of growing to do. Y'all don't know where it's at yet. And that's what I'm saying. It puts questions in the head. If I hadn't seen the things and know the things that I know, then probably questions like that wouldn't arise. You know what I'm saying? I probably wouldn't even think nothing about it, but I do know that there's so many different possibilities out there. And there's so many things that we're finding out is real that we never used to believe in.
Right.
So, I mean, that I'm just throwing that out there. Like I said, I can't prove any of it. It's not about proof. It's just about asking the questions. That's how you grow.
Well, when you're an archaeologist, that's kind of what you do. Because when I look at the Bible, it's not just a Bible. It's not just a book on telling you how you should live or with prophecies. But I also look at it. It's also the history of the earth. According to God. And you can either believe it or you can disbelieve it. I choose to believe it. And of course, if you ever read any biblical archaeology, there's a real nice magazine out there called Biblical Archaeology. They've tried time and time again to disprove a lot of these places that they talk about in the Old Testament. But inevitably, through archaeology, they go and they dig at these places and they find the remains of exactly what the Bible talked about in there. So to me, it's pretty much substantiated that the Bible is fact. So there's a lot of people that don't believe that. They don't even believe in God, but that's those people's decision,
That's just like, everybody thought the city of Troy was a legend until they found it.
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
a lot of people think that Bigfoot's a legend, but as far as I'm concerned, with the tracks and the hair and they've actually got DNA, according to some people, that they've sent off, and it's come back, unknown primate with human chromosome. I mean, there's a lot of evidence by some pictures, and a lot of people. The way I look at it is the pictures that are coming out. Nobody's going to believe any of the pictures until they actually bring a body in, because it's just everybody's going to holler Photoshop or that's fake, And yet, I think there's a few really good, legitimate photographs of Sasquatch out there.
Exactly.
And nobody's really going to believe it until you have an encounter. Now, I actually didn't get a face-to-face encounter like Mike did. I saw a shape or something dark and it was ominous, and it growled, and it shook and broke trees and stepped on branches, and it was frightening enough to send me packing and made a believer out of me. You know,
exactly.
And I don't know how I'm going to handle it if I actually see one face to face where you can actually look in his eyes like Mike did. To me, that's pretty dadgum unnerving, you know. Especially when the thing wanted to put you in the stew pot.
Exactly. If I met one face to face, you know, I'd probably be, well, I'd need a pooper scooper. I mean, you know, if one of them just happened to jump out from behind a tree right in front of me, I would definitely need a pooper scooper.
Well, I can tell you this from personal experience, going into the national forest and also in the thicket here in East Texas, whether it be Angelina National Forest or the Sam Houston National Forest or the Trinity River bottoms back up into the wildlife preserve. I want to tell you, when it gets dark, it gets dark. And that in itself, without a flashlight, if you don't have any lights on, it's like going into a cavern or a cave. If there's not a strong moon out, I tell you, it's a little unnerving. Even just because of the darkness. And then when you start hearing things going bump in the night, when you start hearing growls and you screams or yells or something out there, it's time to pack them up and head to the house, you know. I used to have nerves of steel, and I just don't have I don't know what happened to me, but since that encounter in '77, I don't when the sun starts going down, you know, I'm heading to the house. You know, I've just lost my nerve when it comes to those woods out there. And I love those woods. I grew up, you know, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, whatever, camping out, hunting Indian sites, Indian mounds, you know, historic sites, metal detecting and all that, Civil War campgrounds and all that. And I've been out there a lot. But something about those forests, those woods, there's something out there that just it almost you can almost feel it when you go out there. You know, it's like you're not supposed to be here. You know, and you know.
I believe they'll let you know too that you don't belong there.
Yeah. Well, that's their turf, the way I look at it, and we're the intruder.
Exactly. I'm going to get ready to wind this thing down, so I want to give Mike and Debbie a chance to get a word or two in here before we go.
Well, Roger, I just, you know, want to tell you I appreciate you having us on. I enjoyed it, and it's always good talking to you, whether we're on the radio or whether we're on the phone or messaging each other.
You got that right, brother.
It was a good time, and you know, anytime you know you let me know, my friend, and I'm fixing to hit the sack. And good night, everybody.
Good night, Mike. Thanks for coming. Debbie? Is Debbie not here? Oh, good Lord, she snuck out on us. Anyway, Gary, it was nice having you on there, and that was a very interesting conversation, if I do say so myself.
Well, I enjoy it. I try to listen to all these radio shows that deal with the paranormal or Bigfoot, you know, everything from Ground Zero to George Norrie, you know, I've been listening to it for years, you know, and then once I got, you know, online and all that, I started listening to y'all shows, and so I really enjoy it.
Well, we appreciate it. We'll have to have you back on again sometime, because I want to delve into this stuff a little bit further and a little bit deeper. And
I I'd be glad to.
Now, if you find out any more about the giant skeletons, though, I want to know about that. Send me a friend a Facebook request, and I'd like to chat with you.
Okay, well, friend me on Facebook, or because I'm friends with Mike on Facebook. Just go to his site and friend me, and then I'll accept it, and we can talk on Facebook.
That's awesome. All right, folks, we're still live on WCJV Digital Broadcasting out of Youngstown, New York. We're going to say good night and God bless, and we'll see you next Monday.
Good night.
Yes.